Coming at number 5, we've got the Satanic Idol. Now, Satan is usually quite a controversial figure. In the past, any mention of the name would have been associated with something terrible, especially as satanic panic swept the nation. Why won't anyone think of the children, right? We love to assign weird moral values to stuff to ensure our political weight can be thrown around, but I'm getting off topic. These days, the jury is out on Satan. Many folks love the guy and worship him as ardently as anyone else would worship their deities. Some say he's a more forgiving figure than plenty of other gods and demigods. However, this idol doesn't seem to be associated with that end of the satanic spectrum. This one comes from the bowels of hell and brings with it misfortune and terror, or so they say. Let's take a look at this interesting oddity. With a misshapen horned head, piercing blue eyes, and a strange, unnaturally slim body, this doesn't necessarily look like the powerful demon most folks would assume is Satan. Artists can take liberties with the things they create, so don't write it off simply based on its looks. Apparently, a young hunter had been scavenging through the woods in Connecticut when he stumbled upon this cursed idol. He didn't really know what to do with it, but he took it along just as well. Soon after coming into possession of this horned artifact, he ran into an old man in dark robes, one telling tales of doom and horror. This, of course, spooked the hunter, who discussed this interaction with his friends. Eventually, after some sleepless nights and anxiety, he was put in contact with the Warrens, who came by to evaluate the idol. They deemed it haunted indeed and took it off the poor guy's hands. I'm sure he was very glad to be free of it. Ed and Lorraine strapped the devil thing in and brought it back to their museum where it still remains. So if you ever get a hankering for some devil worship or really want to look into some Gollum-esque blue eyes, you know where to go. Just be careful. That cloaked man in the woods is said to have been a worshipper of Satan, using the idol in dark and terrible rituals. I'm sure it's safe in the museum, but who knows. Coming in number 4, we've got the toy monkey. What is it about old school toys that makes them so creepy? Like, at some point in history, every single toy maker decided it was time to stop making them look that way and move on to much cuter, cuddlier, cooler, and overall less frightening things. Maybe tastes changed, or folks just collectively woke up to the fact that they were letting their kids play with nightmare objects, but regardless of the reason, I'm glad we've left these designs in the past. Dredging up these figures makes for some good spooky times though, right? Take this toy monkey for example. Would you buy your kids something like this these days? I'd wager no, and for good reason. Not only is it unsettling to look at, plenty of similar monkeys have been featured in the spookiest of scenes across Hollywood, but there's a lot of dark energy imbued in this particular monkey. The one at the Warrens Museum is said to carry a terrible curse. Hell, it was even featured in Annabelle Comes Home. So what does a little monkey have to do to earn such a reputation? Well, this one seems to stalk people, torment them, and then kill them. Oh no. Imagine this thing suddenly appearing in your life one day, then as time went on it started popping up in places you know you didn't leave it. Little monkey cymbals might be heard crashing in the middle of the night, and disembodied shuffling can keep you from sleeping. All that's creepy, but it's still just a toy, right? Hold up. Did its eyes just glow? That is some monkey business I want no part of. But hey, at least this one in particular is locked away and not to be recirculated into the general population of antique monkey toys. Well, for now anyway. Coming in number 3, we've got the Shadow Doll. Now, we've all got a particular cursed doll in mind when it comes to the Warrens, and now she's the star of a major motion picture franchise, so it seems that she's always gonna come in first. But there is another doll at the museum that should elicit at least the same amount of fear. That's right, I'm talking about the Shadow Doll. This thing is downright butt ugly. Like, Annabelle as an OG Raggedy Annie is kinda creepy, and they had to make sure they punched up the creepiness with some porcelain features and unnerving eyes for the movie. But if they made a movie featuring the Shadow Doll as is, I think they might actually have to make it less creepy. For real. I don't know if big movie theater chains would allow something like this on their screens. Feels like something out of a snuff film, maybe a low-budget exploitation flick. Nobody's looking at this and saying, oh yeah, I want to watch a whole movie based on this thing. Worse yet, the Shadow Doll seems to carry a much more terrible curse than most. Plenty of cursed dolls require you to be in the same room as them in order for the worst of the effects to hit you, but the Shadow Doll just needs you to view a picture of it to generate risk. Just looking at it means there's a chance it'll visit you in your dreams and kill you there, Freddy Krueger style. And based on looks, I don't think it would make it fun like Freddy does. It would just be brutal and upsetting. Goodness gracious. Coming in number 2, we've got the Pearls of Death. These are known for their outrageously dangerous powers. They might just look like a nice set of pearls waiting to be adorned by the fanciest of folk, but be warned, the glamour is not worth the price. And I'm not talking about how much you pay for them. No, it is not money that these pearls want, it is your life. Owners of this particular string of aquatic orbs have complained time and time again of the necklace constricting around their throat and choking them. According to the first woman to adorn herself with this luxurious item, she felt as if she was being strangled as soon as she put them on. She attempted to take them off, but was unsuccessful. Panicked, she rushed out to request help, and it took multiple people yanking on the string to finally set her free. Since then, people have been very reluctant to wear these pearls. Some believe that a Satanist or black magic worshipper cursed the necklace before it was given to the unfortunate woman, kind of like the opposite of a holy person blessing an object. How fun. I wonder if we got a priest in there, whether they could cancel out the curse. I suppose not too many people are willing to test whether or not the pearls are still strangling. And finally, at number 1, we've got Annabelle, the Warren Museum tenant who needs no introduction, the mistress of the glass case, the shadow clawer of college boyfriends, the mega million movie star herself, Annabelle. What a classic cursed doll. Honestly, I'm sure the museum could liquidate most of their other objects and still have a similar crowd come by if they just kept Annabelle. Legendary. She looks a little different in real life than in the movies, although I'm sure this is true of any movie star. We've already discussed her Raggedy Annie appearance, especially compared to the more porcelain figure in the flicks. However, this doll makes up for a lack of spooky looks with a plethora of terrifying tales. After being gifted to a nursing student, Annabelle started acting strange. She'd move around the house on her own and leave little notes to the girls living there. Eventually, she would attack and strangle the boyfriend of one of the students, leaving them desperate for help. The Warrens soon arrived and whisked the doll away. However, they seemed to know just how wretched and terrible she could be, and as such, they locked Annabelle away in a holy box. This seems to keep her at bay, but who knows? Someday she could break free once again. I'm sure there are plenty more extra cursed and haunted objects held at the Warren Occult Museum, but today we've only got time for 5. Coming in at number 5, we've got the organ. Thankfully, it's not an internal organ or anything like that, although, to be honest, I'm not so sure that would be any more creepy than this haunted musical instrument. Organs always tend to have a spooky sound to them, whether it's that classic bit from Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor, or some old hymnals echoing through an empty church. The pipes and keys combine to create spine-chilling music more often than not. It's a classic sound used to elicit fear and atmosphere in all sorts of different environments. So of course, the Warrens brought one back to the museum. It's not a grand affair, definitely not a pipe organ or anything close to one in size and scope. However, it does make up for a general lack of volume and dynamics with an array of haunted energy. The main thing that tends to set people off about this musical instrument is the fact that it likes to play itself. It's not a player piano, nor is there any sort of mechanism inside that would suggest that it was ever meant to make music without the help of a musician. But when the clock strikes 9 p.m., or the museum's apparent witching hour, this keyed instrument starts to play. I'm sure the first person to discover this detail was sufficiently spooked. Playing on its own isn't the only oddity associated with the organ. It's also known to cause anomalous things to happen to folks who play it. One might see a strange man standing beside the stool as they play, or maybe they'll have dreams full of haunting music for a while. If you go in and hit a few keys on this organ, maybe even sit down and play a fugue, all sorts of unfortunate events may be in your near future. After the organ was retrieved from the supposedly haunted house of a reverend, it was placed in the museum. Interestingly enough, no anomalous activity was reported before it was brought back. However, the Warrens were no slouches when it came to decorating, and soon enough the organ was covered in all sorts of other interesting oddities. Now, this idea I came up with on my own, so don't take it as a fact or ask me to cite anything. But what if the things the Warrens placed upon the organ caused it to become haunted? Maybe the curses dwelling inside of those objects came out and played the organ themselves. Food for thought, for sure. Coming in number 4, we've got human skulls. Speaking of objects that may or may not be cursed but also make for great decorations, the Warrens had quite the collection of human head tops. The pearly white bone matter that makes up the shield for our most important organ. That's right, plenty of human skulls in the museum. And not just for archaeological and medical purposes, these were skulls supposedly used in different satanic rituals. Oh boy. There's one in particular that stands out thanks to its interesting coloration and decorations. The eye sockets are painted bright pink and really pop, and some of the teeth are a yellowy gold, and there is a large star adorning most of the skull's forehead. It's placed on an ornate stand among a plethora of other spooky knickknacks. I guess I shouldn't really be comparing a human skull to a knickknack, but here we are. Now, like I said before, the human skulls accumulated by the Warrens were supposedly used in satanic rituals quite a few times. I can't really elaborate on exactly what that would look like, but the fact that they were there means that it's possible the skulls are now cursed. The demons contacted during said rituals could have left some sort of residual energy in and around the skulls, especially because they did originate from humans. Folks have been terrified of satanic rituals for ages, often using them as shorthand for scary, morally depraved activities. We might not be able to figure out exactly what happened with these skulls, but they definitely hold some sway over folks who might visit the museum. It's morbid, it's creepy, and it smacks of the paranormal. Just hope that this kind of thing never ends up happening to your skull. Or you know what, maybe you'd prefer that the top of your head ends up in a museum. That's one way to stick around for a while, right? Coming in at number 3, we've got the Haunted Music Box. Just another classic spooky object. Where would we be today without spring-wound machines that generate tinkly renditions of famous tunes? I feel like every 10 movies or so there's a shot of a haunted music box. Maybe that's a thing of the past at this point, but we do know that the Perron family dealt with a whole lot of nonsense stemming from a music box in the first Conjuring movie. Some things that appear in the Hollywood flicks don't actually exist in the real world, and they're just there to add some intrigue. The samurai suit in the Feely Mealy game were a couple examples of that, but we'll leave it at that for now. We'll focus back on the music box instead. After playing a big role in the exorcism of Bathsheba, it gained some wicked notoriety. Folks who had seen the movie assumed that this object was cursed in exactly the same way. That's not really the case, but it is fun to imagine, right? Music boxes are classic vessels for curses, especially thanks to the general creepy vibe the music can give off. How many cheap horror creations make use of a distorted music box song and some creepy childish laughter? Actually, keep the number to yourself, I already know it's way up there. Coming in number 2, we've got the white dress. Another urban legend staple, white dresses tend to show up in ghost stories often. Murdered brides, young women gone too soon, mothers who outlive their children, the works. It's hard to pin down where the phenomenon started, but we do know that it's timeless and effective. So of course, there's a haunted white wedding dress at the Warren Occult Museum. I'd be disappointed if there wasn't. In the Conjuring franchise, this dress is said to compel any who wear it to kill their fiancé. However, that's just more movie magic. There's no such tale actually associated with the museum. However, they do display a bridal gown, veil and all, and there is a supposed story that goes along with it. It's meant to represent the White Lady of Union Graveyard in Connecticut. A classic urban legend that we've definitely touched on here before, it's the tale of an unfortunate soul who roams the roads at night, causing accidents and freaking out motorists. Apparently one time she even materialized and put a dent in someone's fender. Unfortunately, the white dress in the museum isn't actually from the White Lady or anything related to her. It's just meant to represent the legend, add a little bit of class to the joint. Because who doesn't love looking at a pretty white dress? And finally, at number 1, we've got the Conjuring Mirror. To cap things off, we'll talk about a particularly spooky reflective surface, the Conjuring Mirror. No relation to the actual Conjuring films though, so far anyway. This is one that has a truly terrifying story attached to it. The idea of mirrors as portals to other worlds is well documented, with different cultures around the world coming to similar conclusions about these shiny planes. People often see things they wish they hadn't in a mirror, which is especially true of the one at the Warren Occult Museum. It's said that if you look into it for long enough, you'll start to see conjured spirits. In fact, the mirror apparently does its best to conjure these spirits upon the user. The story goes that Ed and Lorraine came into possession of it after its previous owner stared into the mirror for weeks on end. For a while nothing happened, but eventually it conjured up a series of faces and figures so gruesome and horrifying that the man lost his mind entirely. He was sent to a mental institution and the mirror was sent to the Warrens. Since then, people have looked into the mirror, but definitely not for weeks at a time. I wonder what would happen if someone replicated the experiment. Coming in at number 5, we've got a vampire coffin. Say what? The resting place of an undead bloodsucker? In this museum? Well, what happened to the previous tenant? Was it forceful eviction, or maybe a what we do in the shadows scenario where a vampire hunter snuck in through the basement and exposed an ancient vampire to sunlight? Regardless of how they came into possession of this burial box, the story probably isn't too pleasant. Still though, what a find. According to Ed and Lorraine, the coffin once belonged to a modern day vampire, but they didn't really elaborate too much on the details. That kind of vagueness just makes me want to know more, you know? Unfortunately, that story may have died with the famous couple, but we can definitely consider a whole plethora of options. There are all sorts of implications that come along with someone claiming to possess a vampire's coffin. How modern are we talking here? Were there other vampires in this one's undead community? Are they trying to blend in with the rest of society at this point, or is it a John Carpenter's vampires scenario where they're looking for more blood than ever? There haven't been too many sightings of vampires lately, at least by my count, so one has to wonder what's been going on. Twilight is trending again, so there's gotta be some sort of vampiric element in the air. A couple more months till October and then we'll know for sure. I wonder if there's anything inside the Warren's coffin. I guess we can't really check at this point, but hey. If anyone has visited or seen someone open the coffin, would you be so kind as to drop the details down in the comments? I'd love to know if there are any rosaries, fangs, or vampire bones left behind. Maybe even some scorch marks that might suggest that the vampire did indeed get burned. Gosh, a modern vampire. I wonder if they like video games or watching sports on TV. Coming in number 4, we've got cursed photographs. Cue the Nickelback jokes. Look at this photograph. Every time I see it makes me suffer. Not as catchy, but you get the point anyway. While none are particularly legendary, you can definitely assume that any photographs at the museum have a creepy backstory. I'm actually kind of surprised more cursed photos aren't circulating these days. It seems like a lot of photographs with spirits and curses imbued within are from the age of the darkroom, or even before that. Do you think that tintype pictures were more likely to be cursed? I suppose there was the good old practice of death photos. Plus, plenty of folks got included in family photos, even post-mortem, because the experience of having your picture taken was so rare. Folks have a lot more opportunities to snap pics of their friends and family these days, so images of corpses made up to be more alive are probably less common, at least as far as I know. The internet is a deep and dark place, and I'm sure there are folks who would pay top dollar for something like that taken with a mirrorless DSLR. Oh boy. Back to the museum though, there are entire walls covered in creepy old photographs. It kind of feels like a haunted house attraction at a theme park sometimes, now doesn't it? We've got brides with their faces totally obscured, white dress and all. Are those flowers symbolic or something? I guess we can't really know. Images of sinister looking men in hunting garb adorn the walls as well, making folks wonder what their story might be. Sullen-faced children looking past the camera, images of demonic figures, questionably dark photographs of things difficult to make out the works. To look at these photos is one thing, but to have one in your home is something else entirely. Thankfully, they're at the museum and not for sale. However, there is the good old theory that photos of the photos might bring the effects of the curse wherever they're viewed. So like the shadow doll, you might be done for just by looking at these pictures of pictures. Maybe consider investing in some holy water or seeking out the advice of a paranormal expert. Good luck with all that. Coming in number 3, we've got demonic masks. Masks hold such rich meaning all across different cultures. The obscuring of one's face can cause so many things to happen, both good and bad. There's the classic idea that once a person puts on a mask, they will finally act as their true self. Others know that masks can protect folks from recognition, whether that means from other humans or paranormal entities that want to take something from you. On stage and in day-to-day performance, masks are associated with deception and hiding one's identity. So when they're used in dark rituals or other haunted rites, they may be inhabited by things other than people. Take a walk around the museum and you will find a treasure trove of creepy and disturbing face coverings. Uncanny Valley inhabitants of the highest order, these creations of rubber and paint can really be upsetting to look at for too long. Red-faced demons, dirty hags, strange screaming mouths, and more. A lot of them remind me of classics from Halloween 3 and Goosebumps, two mask-based experiences that shaped my childhood in ways we can't really get into today. Don't put any of them on, for nobody knows what might be dwelling within. Could be a nice spirit, or even better, nothing. Although there's always the risk of a malevolent demon waiting within, eagerly anticipating the moment an unsuspecting victim dons the mantle. Maybe stick to medical masks for now. No demons should be waiting in there, plus you'll keep all your droplets to yourself. Coming in at number 2, we've got the Tombstones of Children. Yes, you heard that correctly. The Warrens had a collection of grave markers meant to sit above children who passed on. Now, in their defense, apparently these had been collected after they exorcised some demons raised through satanic rituals. The tombstones were not originally moved by the Warrens, but by those who would perform these dark deeds. The Warrens simply took them to the museum after all was said and done, likely in an attempt to prevent others from using them in further rituals. Definitely a strange collection to have, all things considered. Is there something about a child's tombstone that makes it extra potent for ritual use? I wonder what the rationale is behind that, other than sounding extra taboo. And finally, at number 1, we've got a haunted brick. On its own, a brick doesn't seem so bad. It's just a bit of dried clay, that's all. But this brick is special. It was taken from Borley Rectory, also known as the most haunted building in England. This home, built for the rector of the Borley parish, had gained quite a bit of notoriety before burning down and being demolished. After it was built, many claimed that it was haunted by a number of spirits. These claims multiplied when a paranormal investigator published an account of his visit in the Daily Mirror. From there, many more folks decided to see what all the hype was. People claimed to see little Victorian boys roaming the grounds, only to disappear without a trace. Cars have been assailed by phantom thumps, and ghost lights shine brightly in their mirrors. But why would a building built for a rector be haunted from day one? Well, there's an ancient rumor that Borley Rectory was built upon the same grounds that the Benedictine monastery once stood. It was here that a monk and a nun partook in a forbidden relationship, eventually culminating in their untimely deaths. Since then, their presences have been felt all over the grounds, causing bells to ring without anyone around, recording equipment to malfunction, candlesticks to be thrown, and animals to be spooked. The rectory and the monastery are gone now, but the Warrens did procure a piece of the famously haunted place before it fell. One has to wonder how much haunted energy is still imbued in this brick. Would you be willing to pick it up? Who thinks spending a night in this museum would be a fun time? You'd probably see some really spooky stuff, that's for sure. It's hard to tell which items are the scariest because when it comes to the occult, things are never as they seem.